Have you ever felt your world slipping away from you? Like walking down a familiar road, only for the ground to suddenly vanish beneath your feet, sending you into free fall with no way to stop it. I didn't know it would hurt this much. I didn't know silence could be deafening, or words so sharp. That night, when I learned the truth, everything I was turned to dust. I remember that day in every detail. The cold air, heavy with the scent of coming rain. The muffled sounds of the city, indifferent to the fact that my world was crumbling. I was on my way home, staring out of the bus window. A warm evening awaited me, the comfort of routine, the quiet happiness of daily life. Everything seemed as usual. But suddenly, amidst the crowd at the intersection, a familiar figure flashed by. A quick glimpse, a gray coat, a known gesture, a tilt of the head, and next to her, someone else. A second passed, and the bus had already carried me farther. I blinked, trying to shake off the feeling. Did I imagine it? A coincidence? Maybe. I forced myself to exhale and turned away from the window. But something inside me had already begun to stir. My peace had cracked. I tried to forget. Honestly. The evening went on as usual. The house smelled of her perfume and something sweet from the kitchen. She greeted me with a warm look, a kiss on the cheek, and the usual question, how my day had been. Everything followed the same familiar script. Dinner, conversations, her laughter, the light touch of her fingers on my hand. It was probably just my imagination. I tried to convince myself of that. After all, the chances of running into someone who looked similar among hundreds of people weren't that low. And I hadn't even really seen anything clearly. It was just a fleeting moment. But the moment I closed my eyes, the image came back. Blurry, fragmented, but stuck in my mind like a splinter in my skin. "You seem lost in thought," she said as we watched a movie. "No, I'm fine," I smiled. She gave me a slightly longer look, but didn't press the issue. And I didn't question myself anymore either. But the next day when I got home, she wasn't there. She got held up, I thought. But something inside me whispered, or maybe not. I took out my phone to text her, but my finger hovered over the screen. And then I noticed something strange. On the kitchen table sat her half-finished cup of tea, and next to it, her keys. She never left without them. I looked at the table. A cup and some keys. She had left in a hurry. That was obvious. Tea, almost a full cup. She hadn't even taken a sip, which meant that when she poured it, she had no intention of leaving. The keys were still there, so her departure hadn't been planned. Half an hour passed, then an hour. I picked up my phone and dialed her number. One ring, two. No answer. I sent a message. "Where are you?" I waited. 2 gray check marks. She received it, but didn't read it. 10 more minutes passed. The screen lit up. "Got delayed. I'll tell you later." I stared at the message, feeling a tightness in my chest. "I'll tell you later." When was the last time she said that? I leaned back in my chair, trying to convince myself there was no reason to worry. Maybe something had just come up. She stopped by a store, ran into someone, got caught in traffic. But there was a thought in my head I couldn't shake. What if I really did see her? What if she didn't leave in a hurry for no reason? I took a deep breath and looked at my phone. I had to be sure. Just be sure. I got up from the table and looked at her bag, carelessly thrown in the hallway. My heart was pounding, slow and steady, but inside there were no more doubts. Only quiet determination. I leaned down, unzipped it. In the side pocket with loose change, among the bills, something rustled. A receipt. I unfolded it. Restaurant Basilico bill. 2 persons, seafood risotto, steak, 2 glasses of wine. I stared at the lines, as if trying to burn them with my gaze. 2 glasses. Footsteps sounded outside, then the key turned in the lock. She entered quickly, breathing a little heavily, her hair disheveled, coat unbuttoned. "Damn," she exhaled, pulling it off. "I ran out so fast I even forgot my bag." I stayed silent. Clara called, asked for urgent help. I grabbed my coat and ran, didn't even realize I left my keys at home. Luckily, the neighbor let me in. "You must have been worried?" I clenched the receipt in my palm and slid my hand into my pocket. "It's fine," I said evenly. She stepped closer, searching my eyes as if trying to read something. "You seem tense." I smiled. "Just a rough day." She nodded, relaxed. I watched her walk into the room, feeling something inside me freeze. I no longer had any doubts. Now I just had to catch her red-handed. I waited. I waited for that day when she would say she had a work overload, that she needed to stay late, that she might be there until night. When she casually mentioned over dinner, "Tomorrow will be a nightmare. We're closing the month, tons of work, don't wait up for me." I knew. This was it. I nodded, asked something routine, pretended to understand. That night, I barely slept. I lay with my eyes closed, but my mind was tense, thoughts racing through a fog. She breathed calmly beside me, while inside me everything was burning. If not today, then when? In the morning, I waited for her to leave, then quickly got ready. I needed to prepare. In the closet, I found an old pair of binoculars. I had bought them once for a nature trip. A baseball cap, a dark jacket, a hood. I stuffed gloves into my pocket, not even knowing why. Just wanting to be ready for anything. The workday dragged on endlessly. I pretended to work, but barely noticed the time or the people around me. The only thought in my head was, tonight, I will know the truth. The clock read 6:15 p.m. when I arrived near her office. I parked a little farther away, in the shade of the trees. 6:47 p.m. She came out. Alone. She didn't talk to anyone, just got into her car and drove off. I started the engine and, keeping a safe distance, followed her. I kept my distance, trying not to lose sight of her car, but also not to attract attention. A tight knot formed in my chest. My intuition wasn't whispering anymore. It was screaming. She was driving confidently, not looking around. That meant she wasn't expecting to be followed. A red light. I slowed down, letting her get a little ahead. "Where are you going?" She turned off the main road. I slowed down even more, giving her space. Up ahead, a residential area, small houses with well-kept lawns. No offices, no work. She pulled up in front of one of the houses. For a few seconds, she sat in the car as if gathering her thoughts. Then she grabbed her bag and stepped out. The door to the house opened before she even reached it. A man. I couldn't see his face in the darkness, just his silhouette. Tall, standing casually, as if he had been waiting for her. She took a step toward him. And at that moment, I suddenly realized I wasn't breathing anymore. I don't remember how long I sat in the car, staring at the house. Blood pounded in my ears, my chest tightened into a hard knot. I waited. During all this time, no one went in, no one came out. Only shadows flickered in the window. I had to do something. But what? Drive closer? Call her? Burst into the house? Thoughts raced through my mind, but my body refused to move. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers turned white. 20 minutes passed. A shadow flickered in the window, then another. The light on the first floor went out. I felt my hands trembling. How much longer was I going to deceive myself? I pressed the call button. The ringing stretched on endlessly. 1, 2, 3. In my head, I could already hear her answer. "Sorry, darling, there was more work than I thought." But the call was declined. I stared at the screen. She. had declined. My call. A cold wave crashed over me. Now I knew for sure. Knew it for myself. But I needed proof. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the tremble in my hands. If I left now, tomorrow she would just come home and smile as if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't seen her enter that house. As if she hadn't declined my call. I pulled the binoculars from the glove compartment. I had grabbed them earlier in the day, just in case. Though I hadn't even known for what. Now, they would actually come in handy. Quietly, I opened the car door and crouching crossed the street. The house sat slightly elevated on a small hill. I found a position behind the trees where I had a clear view of the windows. The first floor was dark, but on the second, I saw them. The silhouettes moved slowly, unhurried. I could barely make them out through the curtains, but it was enough. They stood close, too close. And then the silhouettes merged into one. And at that exact moment, like a blow to the temples, the sounds began. Muffled, but unmistakable. Too recognizable to be mistaken. Moans. I don't remember how long I watched. Probably too long. Then slowly I lowered the binoculars, closed my eyes, and realized I was breathing just as heavily as they were inside, behind that window. I stood with my back pressed against the tree, gripping my phone tightly. My breath was shaky, but I forced myself to focus. Camera, video. My hands trembled as I aimed the lens at the window. Behind the curtain, everything continued. I couldn't hear every word, but the sounds spoke for themselves. I hit record. A second, another, minutes. I recorded as much as I needed. Then, slowly, I put the phone in my pocket, wiped my face with my hand, and exhaled. That was it. I walked back to the car. The door shut, the engine started. The tires crunched against the gravel. In the rearview mirror, the house slowly disappeared into the night. On the road, I realized I was driving slowly. Not because there was no hurry, just because something inside me had turned empty. I knew. Everything. Completely. I arrived home, turned on the light, walked to the kitchen, sat at the table. Her cup was still there. The tea had gone cold. An hour passed, then another. I heard the door open, her light footsteps in the hallway. "You're still awake?" Her voice was cautious but not alarmed. I didn't answer right away. I just took out my phone, pressed play on the video, and placed it on the table. She leaned in to look, and froze. For a minute, we sat in silence. I just watched as the color drained from her face, as her lips tightened, as her eyes widened. When the recording ended, I said only one word. "Pack your things." She didn't ask. Why? She didn't try to explain, to lie, to cry. She just sat down across from me and covered her face with her hands. And I didn't want to see her tears anymore. I quickly threw a few things into a bag. Just for a couple of days, just to leave. She stood in the doorway, pale, confused. "Wait, let me explain." I didn't want to hear tears or excuses. Everything was already clear. I walked past her. Behind me, I only heard, "I'm sorry." I shut the door behind me. As I walked down the stairs, I felt only one thing. Emptiness. No anger, no pain, no relief. Outside, the cold air hit my face, but inside, everything was still dead. I got into the car, started the engine, but didn't drive away. The phone lay beside me. On the screen, the video, one move, and her life would shatter just like mine. I stared at the screen. Should I? 1 minute, 2. Then I turned off the phone, pressed the clutch, and drove away. Is betrayal a full stop, or just a comma? The end of the story, or merely a new chapter? They say time heals. But does it erase the images burned into your mind? Does it make you unhear what you've already heard? I tried to imagine what would have happened if I had never found out. Would I have lived in ignorance, believing a lie, smiling back at her smile? Would I have been happier or just deceived? Some say, if you love, forgive. Others insist that forgiveness is possible, but trust can never be restored. And some believe betrayal should never go unanswered. But what matters more? Revenge, justice, or the ability to walk away without losing yourself? I didn't make a scene. I didn't shout. I didn't listen to her excuses. Everything was already clear. I chose silence, where her faint sorry echoed without meaning. I chose to leave, because staying meant continuing to destroy myself. But where is the line between weakness and strength? Between forgiveness and cowardice? I don't know if there's a right answer. Each person makes their own choice. And you?